I finally realized I need to stop trying to iterate a formula that these other advisors have been doing for years and having conversions every time.
Humans have been telling stories since the beginning of
Yeah.
since the invention of fire, and it's been proven to work. It's worked throughout history.
Welcome to Sandbox After Dark.
While the industry sleeps, we build.
The Sandbox After Dark podcast.
After Dark.
So, Brian, why is it that so many people have great stories? Financial professionals, everybody, even our content creators have great stories, but they fail to turn that great story into a great video or presentation.
It comes down to marketing. We talk about this all the time, but you have to construct it in a way that gets people to lean in. You open those loops, you create curiosity. It's like when you hear a great story, like those documentaries you were watching yesterday, you get teased with some information and you can't help but wait to see what happens next, or how's it end?
I think you put it perfectly. It's a car crash that you can't help but looking at.
Yeah, that's why we all slow down and look at a car crash. It's like there's something happening and you can't help yourself to figure out what it is.
Breaking story. We have a new live video feed of the O.J. Simpson murder that's never been seen before.
Yeah.
Like you can't turn the channel. You want to check out.
And then they go, we'll be right back after this message. And then now you sit through the commercial or whatever it is. Or they tease the ending at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
We were watching 60
highlight
Minutes
clips.
yesterday.
Clip.
All these super interesting moments. And now you're like, now I got to figure out what happens. And then
I want to see what caused that to happen.
You wait for the whole half hour.
Well, thanks for staying up with me as we're prepping for our Sandbox Live. And so welcome to the Sandbox After Dark. Rob Souza,
Brian Wayne.
And we're just kicking it here, brainstorming out the feedback that you and I have gone back and forth on.
The most interesting thing that we talked about yesterday in prepping for this is the presentation that you do at the workshop, and how it's perfectly architected you have to hit certain points. And you were telling me how no matter how many times you taught it and trained it, and advisors would think, well, that's a good idea. I can enhance it. I can tweak it. I can make it better. And you would just end up ruining it. What is the formula that gets people to things that you figured out in a live presentation that translate into a documentary or a TV show or a podcast?
Yeah. So, well, and that's where you come in. I spent almost 10 years doing 1 to 2 workshops, live financial professional workshops in front of crowds of anywhere from 12 to 25 people. And in all different states and for all different types of financial professionals. And there is a recipe. It took us $100,000 in 12 months. I know I say it all the time, before we finally figured out how to get it to convert. And it was a painful process. A lot of financial professionals don't have $100,000 in 12 months to figure it out.
Or the patience.
Or the patience.
They give up. They think, oh, this doesn't work.
Right.
And they give up too early.
So we iterated till we finally dialed in every element. And a quick shout out. I think she's still at Simplicity, but Natalie, who used to work at White Glove, now works at Simplicity. Natalie Grossi is the one who she was our rep for doing workshops. And so we would send her a recording and say, what are we doing wrong? And then she'd send it to a couple other financial professionals that had figured it out and dialed in their system. And we kept taking those ideas and trying to apply them. But of course, egotistically, I would put my own enhancement or spin on it to make it even better. And
it totally falls apart.
And it wouldn't have the same results. And after, I think we got to month 8, I finally realized I need to stop trying to iterate a formula that these other advisors have been doing for years and having conversions every time. If they figured it out, I just need to do it the way they're telling me to do it.
And
stop trying to iterate. Stop trying to think I'm I'm going to do it even better than them.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of sales training, and I know that feeling. I'm sure everyone listening, it's like when it feels canned. So you think, oh, I don't want to say those words. It just doesn't sound natural, doesn't sound fluid. But it's the language that converts. It works. So when you try to soften it or soft sell it, it doesn't have the same impact.
You know, that's a good point. I think the reason that we changed the formula that was being recommended to fix our problem, for at least at the time when I started, I was working with my brother-in-law, and this is a common problem. He's like, yeah, but that's just not natural that's not my personality to say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would adapt it to saying it the way he felt comfortable with. But it was
it softens it.
It watered the effect down.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I think sometimes, and that's why so often actors, presenters, let's just say presenters, even comedians, are not the person in real life that they are on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like comedy is an art that you craft.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, like if you're sitting with that person at a nightclub or whatever, or in a living room, they're not kicking off those jokes like they would on stage. They're totally different.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are introverts.
Or how many times have you tried to retell a joke that you heard?
It falls flat.
But you tell it different, and the punchline just doesn't land because you're like, oh, I told it wrong.
And then people are looking at you like, that's not funny.
Yeah. Or you try and water it down because it might be a little too racy, so you change it, but it doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah.
It's just.
And I think, and we should have recorded all the time we spent in prep because we had some really great conversations. But I do think I learned from our conversation that once, and that's what we're trying to do in the sandbox, is take proven formulas and then try and provide those formulas to financial professionals, because I don't want people to spend $100,000 in 12 months. If they can take a formula that's already been proven by hundreds of advisors or financial professionals, then why not pass that on for free, give people a leg up, and being able to break into the industry and successfully get to marketing so you get a return on your money from the jump instead of waiting 3 months, 6 months.
And we're just trying to adapt it into a new format that doesn't require a live presentation. Although everything that we're talking about and teaching could be used in a live presentation. You've proven that.
Well, and I think that wasn't even a choice. I think it was a natural iteration because of the pandemic. We were forced to, how do I take these hundreds of presentations live and how do we turn them into webinars? Because that was our only choice.
And then you were telling me the problem that you were having there, because when you do it live, people were flying you out to do the open.
Well, no. It started out as me teaching the live, but in frustration of them not able to follow the formula, people were paying me. When it got to the pandemic, they were paying me to be on the webinar call, and then they would have me do the open and they'd have me do the close, and then I'd be on mic to communicate to the,
kind of steer them in the right direction. But on a webinar,
hey, Brian, can you go back and cover the very thing that they forgot to cover?
And say it this way?
Well, it wouldn't be that obvious, but I was leading them.
But that was difficult to translate into a webinar.
Super, super difficult. And the reason that it's difficult is because when you're in a live presentation, if you're an observant person, which if you're a salesman, you should be, right? Mm-hmm. Is that you can read the faces in the room.
The confusion on their faces.
You can see the glassy eye, huh? Or you can see people leaning in. You can see people nodding in agreement. Mm-hmm. So it gives you validation that you said it right, explained it right. They're in agreement. So learning the translation of to get that sort of reaction, you have to use live chat. You have to either do it as a true Zoom call with everybody's cameras on, which is next to impossible to get people to do.
Mhm.
Because people want to watch your webinar and keep doing their work.
You can say, put a yes in the chat if you agree with me. So there's all these tricks.
Right. Like put this word in the chat, put yes or no in the chat. And then as you go through this hook, story, offer, micro commitment, I mean, there's this whole comprehensive formula, small commitments to bigger commitments to bigger commitments. If you haven't done all of that and you get to the end and then all of a sudden you throw out an offer, but you haven't gotten them to buy into anything previous to that offer, you're asking them to hit a home run.
Yeah.
You're asking them to step up the plate and not just swing at a pitch. You're asking them to step up at the plate and hit a home run. And that's so intimidating and so much pressure that people are going to.
You got to get them saying yes all along the way, all the way through your presentation. And this is what a lot of YouTubers have figured out, the algorithm, because what YouTube wants is watch time. They want engagement.
Right.
So I've seen some really good people that have mastered this, where they're constantly doing that. They're saying, put a yes in the comments if you agree, or if this is, you want more clarification. So they're eliciting engagement from the audience. And so it can translate. It does translate into video. And now we're trying to figure out how to inject more of a story into that too, to get that emotional attachment, which is also part of engagement.
Well, and so the final 3 step of the story was webinars became so difficult because trying to help advisors follow a formula and not deviate was so painful. I was getting on plane flights during the pandemic that when AI content, the ability to create a presentation using AI, and the reason we chose documentary style was because everybody's afraid of the inauthenticity of using AI. Well, that's not real and it's not believable. And I'm being misled or deceived. AI trying to represent somebody real, so I don't believe that story. But when you and I have studied,
people have been they're so used to the deep fake that's going on right now. It's all in the media.
So that's where you came in and helped us transition from webinars to AI documentaries. But how do we overcome those, the challenge? People already don't trust. I mean, after the Sigmund Freuds and who was the other New York guy who went to one of the
Bernie
Bernie
Madoff.
Madoff. Okay, so you get enough of those stories, and people are like, the whole, what was after 2008? There was that march on Wall Street.
They all camped out on Wall Street.
Yeah, it's getting too late, and maybe I've had too much whiskey to remember. But the point being is that people naturally distrust. Anytime I think everybody went through 2008, comes out with a natural distrust. The banks, out of greed, took advantage of selling mortgages they shouldn't have sold to people that probably could not afford it, and they knew it. They knew it. And they knew they were just going to bundle that into a derivative, which they were going to dump off onto another bank. Well, you can only dump it off to enough banks before a bank finally you run out of banks, and they finally figure out the garbage that's in the portfolio of the 100 loans you
crash.
Yes. And so it was inevitable. So people don't trust the financial industry, and financial professionals kind of fall into that industry. So how did you help me go from the problem of financial professionals not able to follow a formula to persuade them to take action, to solving that problem with AI, but without the skepticism? How do you overcome the skepticism of this is AI or is this not AI? Is this a deep fake? Is this real?
We just come right out and tell them it's AI. It's because if you can, so we talked about this the other day too, where you can watch a Pixar movie, it's not real, but it can still pull emotion out of you, can still tell a story. And you could even, and in a documentary, those murder documentaries that my wife loves watching, like the Datelines and the 2020s and all that. They're just reenactments anyway. They're hiring actors to recreate the story. Your brain tells you, it's like, well, I know that's not the real guy, but I get it because the journalist is telling a story and this is just, reenacting the story. So if we can do the same thing with AI and we can say, hey, this is a production that uses AI to recreate these stories.
Based on true story, true facts.
Yeah, they're composite stories or whatever, and we're using AI, but all the facts are real. The stories and facts are real, and it'd be no different than Walt Disney, drawing a character of like Prince of Egypt, or something like that. There was a true story, but it's done in a fictional way.
But the difference is that even Walt Disney were not real stories. What we're trying to do is actual real stories.
Yeah. Well, that's why, like a historical story that's an animated version of it, it's a real story, but it's
okay. But why is it that we'll all watch a historical documentary with
we believe that it's real? Because we know that it's real.
It's documented history.
Yes.
And so
they're reenacting history, like World War II movies or whatever. It's a reenactment of something that actually happened. So at the beginning of we're basically saying at the beginning of our documentaries, this is all based on a true story. We've all seen movies like that. You totally buy into it. And even that ends up being a little bit of a hook, because now you're watching this crazy story and in your mind you're going, wow, this really happened.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, so when you do that, and I think a lot of our financial professionals that are working with us on WealthVids are struggling, because I think when you say this is based on a true story, if you don't have real video clips from real like news broadcasts during that same time and references in the documentary that are real, that can be looked up online and verified and watched, then there's no reference point for being a true story. So yeah. I think it's important, and we've noticed this in our early year. AI documentaries has only been around for 12 months, a little over 12 months.
Yeah.
But if there's natural distrust, people want third-party validation. Mm-hmm. So providing a real clip. So I think of the Frontline clip about the 2008 crash, and the Frontline documentary opens up with a guy sitting in the train with a TV screen that's showing a famous newscaster that we're all familiar with say, and the markets dropped another 17% today for a total loss of 36% down for the year. And then like we all remember those newscasts back then. And so that third-party validation, seeing a real clip, I think anchors people into, takes them back in time. Mm-hmm. Say, I remember that happening. So now in their own mind, I remember that happening. And so now they want to see more about that story they remember happening.
Yeah. And then you open that loop and you tell them something that maybe they didn't know. And then
you're adding to the story.
And then you proceed to give your presentation. And we've constructed it in a way to take some of those sales elements. So we're creating a hybrid of a documentary, like a 60 minutes, and a live presentation.
Or Frontline,
that has all those sales beats in it that you're pulling instead of pushing. You're pulling your audience through the story instead of trying to force feed them a bunch of facts and data that they just don't care about anyway. But if you can wrap it in a story that they do care about or they do remember, like, oh my God, I almost lost everything back then. So and then you can present the problem, and then you present your solution, and then you offer them an opportunity to learn more.
So let's talk about the application of that. So if we're showing a third-party validation, what would you recommend to financial professionals who are doing this? Because even a famous newscaster presenting a familiar story from the past can be deepfaked. It can be recreated on AI.
Yeah, of course.
So how do we overcome that in a documentary so people can go verify?
Well, you could provide the links. You could provide
Okay.
news clippings.
Okay. So you can.
you could reference them with graphics on the screen, like
Okay.
From Wall Street Journal date, March 2020 or whatever.
Would you recommend even like if, because a lot of our videos do have that, the logo and the date,
and it's perfectly fine to use real clips from news as long as you give credit too.
and they have to be under a certain amount of time. But would you recommend putting a URL at the bottom lower third that they could actually go look out on the internet to verify that it's true?
Yes, because your documentary is going to live on a sales page anyway, and that's where you put your sales copy. And you also could reference, because you want to put reviews, you want to put case studies, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And part of that would be, here's this news article. If you want to click on it and go read it. Although I wouldn't recommend that you don't want to get people off your page.
Right.
so you want to keep them there. But
so there's a question. We can put the URL in the lower third, or we could just list each live video clip in the description. Like if you have
list like footnotes,
in the description, you could actually have live links in the description.
On YouTube, yes,
on YouTube.
Yes.
So and if you were on a sales page, you can put sources down below at the bottom of the page, and they can reference those resources. But I like the idea of having the ability to say, if you don't believe me, click, go here and click here, and you can validate the stuff and not just take us for our word, right?
Yeah, and I would even say that in the presentation, like, don't take my word for it. Here's this source, this source, this source. That's probably enough for most people.
Yeah, I agree.
As long as if you say it, and the more authentic you can be, the more. And this is a debate that's going to go on for a while, this whole AI thing, but it's no different than turning the camera on and talking into. You can fake a whole bunch of information with a real person too, but it's all about authenticity and just kind of like showing people that, hey, this is, I don't have anything to gain from this. I'm just presenting information.
Well,
here's these sources. Go check it out for yourself.
Well, that's why investigative documentary is kind of where we're going as a replacement for a webinar for those who want to do digital
journalism.
Right. And so it's really important. The last piece I wanted to touch on, and then I want to do some natural reviews of some of the scripts that have been submitted over the last week from our challenge that we threw out and get your feedback on them, is story arc, because I think that's been a struggle too. And in a good investigative journalism piece we looked at earlier today, instead of having like a third-party abstract testimonial, and then 2 minutes later you have a different family giving a testimonial, and then or case study, and then 30 seconds later it's another couple. So when we watched, I think it was 60 Minutes, earlier today. Is they did a really good job of narrowing it down to like two of the most emotionally impactful stories of the investigation, and followed them. So they kept coming back to them.
Yeah, they followed them through their whole day.
All the way through the entire documentary until you saw the result at the end of the documentary of how it impacted their lives. And I thought that was much more emotionally engaging.
And it tells that story, and it's not someone just telling you a story, you're witnessing it.
And that allows people to come to their own conclusion, and not you, which is the biggest problem with the financial industry and workshops. It's not you telling them what they should think or what you think. They
come to the conclusion on their own.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's the struggle. And it's really tough for people who are so passionate about their solution.
Which is why we go so heavy on stories. And that's a great way to frame it, is people are, in a sales presentation, you're just dumping facts on people and data, and you're forcing them to believe you. But if you can just show them, we call it show, don't tell. you're witnessing someone go through that same experience that you hope to have, overcome the struggle that they have, that your audience has, and they come out with a solution on the other end. It's like that thing you do with the in the presentation, or when you do the live workshop and you have the pink paper and the blue paper, and everyone has to turn in the pink paper, but only turn in the blue paper if you want an appointment. And when the whole line that's exiting, they see everyone dropping the blue paper on for an appointment. You said you've seen people go back and
Go sit back
out their
down and fill
paper
out the blue paper
and schedule an appointment because they just saw 10 other people do it. And in their mind, and this is what happens in a good documentary or story, you're seeing that and you're like, wow, if they're getting those results, if they're willing to take this step, they must be really smart. Now I feel stupid, so maybe I should book an appointment too.
Yeah.
So it's that psychological thing. And so in a documentary, when you see someone go through a change, hey, someone waited 5 days in their car, slept in the parking lot so they could see a doctor for free and get new dentures. Like, wow, if they're willing to do that,
I could do that.
I could do that too.
This is a real company that's in a different city every single weekend.
Or wow, look at the impact that company is having. Maybe I should donate some money.
Yeah. That it's persuading people to take action.
Yes. To change their mind, make them take action.
And the documentary never asked you to do any of those things. They never made a pitch for.
That's the amazing part.
After the first time they aired that documentary, do you remember the number? I don't remember, but it was millions and like
it was like 10 times to their donations.
Yes,
overnight.
Overnight, and there was they didn't even put a website up for the nonprofit.
There was one story where a doctor watched they had done that same story a couple of years before, and a doctor just looked online and said, I want to volunteer, and he's been volunteering for the last 10 years,
and now he's gotten his entire family involved in going with him and volunteering.
And no one even asked him to do it. So that's the power of a compelling story that is persuasive.
And whether you do live workshops, webinars, or what we do, which is the video documentaries, only because we take the human element out and we can dial in the formula exactly the way it should be. Yeah. It doesn't matter. This applies to any presentation. It could be a boardroom presentation.
Humans have been telling stories since the beginning of since the invention of fire.
So you can apply this to anything.
And it's been proven to work. It's worked throughout history. And this is the future.
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump in and look at some. Let's see. We were going to do. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to do it on my phone. We'll put this on live stream during our live, so people can hear. But for your and I's sake, we talked about the hook, story, offer, formula. So I'm going to play 3 submissions real quick. Just we're going to try and do one brief sentence feedback, and then I'm going to go to the next, just so we can get through all of this in the time frame we have, and then we'll go a little deeper during the Sandbox Live.
And unavoidable. Today, we are critiquing 3 hook submissions for the Sandbox Challenge to see which one traps attention best. Starting right now with the call to awareness hook.
Yeah, let's jump right into it.
So, looking at the pivot from retirement planning to, sudden caregiver, it ends with the line, your income, your time, and your future all get pulled in at the same time. Does listing those 3 things actually kill the panic?
The emotional pull in the caregiver hook actually dilutes its own tension by listing too many abstract consequences at the very end.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Stating income, time, and future really diffuses the specific emotional punch. It weakens the strategic clarity and honestly lowers its scroll stopping ability.
Because it feels like a laundry list?
Exactly. It feels like a laundry list rather than a sharp realization. To fix it,
I don't know if we've conflated 2 documentaries here. We'll have to clarify that in the live.
Yeah.
But I know what documentary they're talking about with the caregiving. And it is true. There's some So I'm going to just start with that one, and maybe even rewind it a little bit, where it starts with the caregiving.
Focus on one singular,
If I can
visceral,
get it. Okay.
really detention by listing too many abstract.
Okay. So the first one was federal employees. I'm going to skip that for now.
Mhm.
And then the next one is actually how to prepare for unexpected caregiving, long-term care type situations, and how that cannot devastate your retirement, right?
Mhm.
Now I know that because I read the script, but this is a Notebook LM critique, AI critique of that. So let's walk through that specific critique.
Okay.
Consequences at the very end.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Stating income, time, and future really diffuses the specific emotional punch. It weakens the strategic clarity and honestly lowers its scroll stopping ability.
Because it feels like a laundry list?
Exactly. It feels like a laundry list rather than a sharp realization. To fix it, you need to focus on one singular, visceral loss to tighten the open loop and make the target audience feel the immediate threat.
I see. So what would be a better way to end it?
I would change the ending to something like, what is your plan when one phone call forces you to drain your own?
And I'm wondering if we have these mislabeled.
Yeah.
Let's scroll down here. I don't see even. I don't see it. It doesn't sound like they're talking about hook. Sounds like they're talking about the way to end it. But either way,
Well, I get what they're saying because it's there were like the laundry list. And this is a common thing that we talk about all the time too. If you give your audience too many choices, you confuse them.
or address too many problems.
And there should only be one. Your presentation is about one thing, not many things. And the reason it has to be one thing is if there's two things or three things, well, then the one thing becomes less important.
Yes.
And now you're like, well, shit, which one is more important? Which one should I work on first? If there's three, oh no, what do I do? And you want to get your audience to, if you're going to call them to action, if you're going to say, click the button to do this thing, it has to be the one thing that they,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely. So what I want to do is let's continue this conversation with critiquing these audio files or the script submissions from last week in the actual live.
Yeah.
And we'll go ahead and wrap up tonight's After Dark, and then continue with the live tomorrow morning, and then we'll really dig into giving you specific examples
Yeah.
or critiques from Notebook LM about specific script submissions, and then we can have you give us your opinion on each of those.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see everybody tomorrow morning. Wednesday,
9
or
a.m.
Thursday, 9 a.m.
Yes.
Pacific, and we will continue the Sandbox Live.